Peter, I think you summarized it perfectly earlier in the program when you identified the four that we believe are most likely to join the Packers and the Browns as teams with vacancies. The Jets with Todd Bowles, the Broncos with Vance Joseph, the Bucks with Dirk Cutter, and the Cardinals with Steve Wilks. I think it would be a surprise if any of those four coaches aren't fired. Beyond that, we know there'll be more. Just good luck figuring out which ones they're going to be.
Well, and you know, the ones that are close and the ones we really don't know, you know, let's take Carolina, for instance. You can sit here, I can sit here and say this team's 3 years removed from being 15-1. Ron Rivera has not lost control of this team at all. And you shouldn't fire the coach. But again, we don't know what is going through a new owner's head, even though his whole training for this job has essentially been to stay the course, you know, because he knows that that is how successful franchises exist and how they keep going. Mike, 1 month from today, excuse me, 1 month from today will be the 50-year anniversary of the hiring of Chuck Noll. And so you look at that and you say, okay, there's been a half century in Pittsburgh with 3 head coaches. And you can say whatever you want. Tomlin's not good enough. He can't get to the. Hey, you know, the Pittsburgh Steelers every year walk into training camp in Latrobe, Pennsylvania with a chance to win and a chance to win big. That is what a good coach does. He gets your team ready and prepared to play a long season and to be in contention at the end to get ready to win. Chuck Noll did that, Bill Cowher did that, and now Mike Tomlin is doing that. And I only bring up that point because it can seem to a new owner, man, there's this guy out there, there's that guy. I wonder what Josh McDaniels could do. Maybe we could go and get Lincoln Riley. Maybe this guy would be it. Who knows? But I'll never forget the time covering the Giants in the mid-'80s. There was a punt returner there named Phil McConkey, who got traded to the Green Bay Packers, who at the time stunk. And he was all excited because he was going to get to play in the regular offense as well as being a punt returner. He ends up getting cut by the Packers and coming back to the Giants. And his quote to us in the locker room when he came back to New York was, "Grass is greener, my ass." And so at this point, I hope that David Tepper kind of realizes that, okay, if you get Nick Saban, that'll be okay. But otherwise, hang on to Ron Rivera and keep going forward.
Well, and that's the challenge, Peter. And I think that's why a lot of these guys may get another year, because it's the devil you know versus the devil you don't. And how are you going to be confident you're going to upgrade? Point I was kind of making with the Browns earlier. Now that Greg Williams gotten them to the point where they're very good, you better get somebody who's really and clearly better before you cut bait on Greg Williams. And so I think some of these guys who are on the bubble, maybe they stay because there isn't that significant upgrade. And I want to start in Miami because I've heard from several different people that Stephen Ross would love to hire John Harbaugh if he could, but now that the Ravens have made it clear that he's staying, or at least he's under contract through 2019, which I think is an invitation to contact the Ravens and make them an offer, unless Stephen Ross is going to do something like that, and I've heard the Ravens are going to have a stiff asking price if and when someone does call, he's just going to have to stick with Adam Gase.
Here's the interesting thing about Harbaugh right now. So John Harbaugh, as you said, is under contract through 2019. And there have been a couple of scenarios floated out there. One, that his daughter is going to be a senior in high school, and he would really love to get through this next year with a solid family life in the Baltimore area. And then after that, who knows? But I'm not sure that that's really all that significant in terms of his long-term future. This is just what I believe. I believe that John Harbaugh, he would love to continue coaching the Ravens for a long time. But there's a couple of things at play here. If you're Dick Cass, the president of the Ravens, if you're Steve Bisciotti, the owner of the Ravens. You look at your team since you won the Super Bowl. You're 50-47. You've won one playoff game. You haven't gone into deep into the playoffs one time in 5 years. So you're asking yourself this question. What is that coach worth? Mike, my calculations are, and you would probably know this better than I, there are 8 coaches, 1/4 of the coaches in the NFL right now who make $8 million or more per year, including John Harbaugh, who I think is on the lower end, right around $8 million. So if you look at long-term, what John Harbaugh would want, I think he would want to say, okay, listen, I just see Pete Carroll got whatever he got. We've seen reports it's around $11 million a year. I would like to get at least that if we're talking about signing here long-term. And again, Mike, this stuff is all Pravda. We don't know the real stuff in here. But what I'm saying is, if you're John Harbaugh, I'm just making this point. If you're not getting paid in the 11+ million region, why not just coach it out in 2019? Say, look, I'm happy to stay. Why not, if you're John Harbaugh, why not be Kirk Cousins? Why not just say, hey, I'm gonna be what Joe Flacco was in 2012 or 13, whatever year that was, and I'm gonna have faith in myself. I'm gonna gamble on myself. And at the end of that, they won a Super Bowl. Joe Flacco got his $20 million a year contract. And now you look at John Harbaugh. Why not do that? That's exactly the way I'd play it if I were him.
And Peter, here's what's so amazing about the NFL coaching industry. No one ever does that. And I don't know whether they just cling to the bird in the hand. They don't want to take the chance that they're going to become a free agent and there's not going to be a team out there that signs them. But Harbaugh has seen and heard enough this year. When it looked like he might get run off by the Ravens, they were going to line up at the door to hire John Harbaugh. So he knows, I come back for that one more year. I'm going to be at the top of the A list, and I will be able to go anywhere I want, assuming there's a vacancy. And maybe there'll be vacancies that otherwise wouldn't have been there if Harbaugh's in play. But I agree with you. Coaches should treat themselves like free agents treat themselves. They don't. And maybe if Harbaugh does it, that'll be the beginning of a trend where coaches say, I don't want your contract extension. I want to become a free agent because I have confidence that someone else is going to pay me a lot more than you ever would. And I still think there's a chance that someone tries to finagle Harbaugh now, although it's not easy to do because first you got to fire your coach. Then you got to do your normal coaching search, including compliance with the Rooney Rule. And then at some point you make the formal contact with the Ravens and try to work out what the compensation would be, assuming you can even convince Harbaugh to come join your team. Now, a lot of that stuff's going to get done behind the scenes ahead of time. But I thought it was very compelling when you pointed out on Monday that John Harbaugh, there's a real chance he doesn't accept an extension from the Ravens. I think it definitely puts him in play to walk away after next year. And it has to make the Ravens think twice before they say we want a John Gruden package this year because they're looking at the reality of getting nothing for him a year from now.
I think the biggest thing is if I were the Ravens, look, I would want John Harbaugh. I think he's one of the top 5 coaches in the NFL. I understand that they haven't won in the last 5 years. That's the way life goes sometimes. They make the bold decision this year, forced slightly to go with Lamar Jackson, but now to stick with him. And I think if you look at the scenario that they're in right now, John Harbaugh has to really like the direction of his team going forward. They've got a different offense that everybody's going to have to go to school on to try to stop. And with so many of these young defensive stars looming on this team, and with Terrell Suggs playing like he's 25, not 35 or whatever he is, this is a really interesting team in 2019. One of the teams that in the offseason will be studied heavily on both sides of the ball to see they're doing it a different way. Is that a smart way? Is it a sustainable way? And so if I'm John Harbaugh, Mike, I know this is going to sound strange, but even if a Cleveland or Green Bay came after him and tried to offer compensation for him and they could work it out, If I were him, I might want to stay in Baltimore. That is, I just think it's a fascinating story.
Here's the key. He can get with one of these other teams, not with the Packers or the Browns, but he could get with the Dolphins something he doesn't have and will never have in Baltimore, and that is control. Adam Gase currently runs everything in Miami, and I assume that if Stephen Ross would end up making this move and being successful, Harbaugh gets the keys to the organization. If that's something he wants, he's only going to get it in a place like Miami or another team that would be willing to hand everything over to him. And maybe at this point in his career, he wants to give that a try. Who knows? But I think that would be a factor in this as well. We're going to take a quick break.
But the one negative thing there, Mike, the one negative thing there, no quarterback. And the other places have quarterbacks, and he probably has his quarterback in Baltimore.
You can sign Joe Flacco in Miami. I'm just kidding.
Boy.
I don't know that.
All right.
I don't know that Joe Flacco would be interested in a reunion with John Harbaugh after the way things went down this year.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.